Hey Divas, we have enjoyed bringing you podcasts week in and week out for the last almost 100 shows. We're coming up to our 100th show. Can you believe that already? And if you've enjoyed listening, please help us keep the lights on here by subscribing to the show and giving us a rating. We'd love 5 stars, but we won't tell you what to do on your favorite podcast platform. We are here today with one of my new Gs. That's right, he's not an OG. I hope he will become one someday. We have got the incoming House Speaker, Danny Perez, joining us today, live and in person. Not in the Terracotta Room, but in downtown Tallahassee. The Speaker and I talk about his allegiance to the 305. We talk about the upcoming elections and targeted races, talk about what his legislative priorities are going to be, how he plans on leading the House, and he also gives us a little secret, something about him that you might not know. House Speaker-Designate Daniel Perez, welcome to A Deeper Dive.
The following that President Trump has in Miami is very impressive. The Cuban culture is very open, very transparent, very honest, and very upfront. We kind of tell you how it is. Trump is very similar in that manner. He's a straight shooter, not seen by the Cuban community as a politician, just seen as a regular dude who says it how it is.
You're listening to Deeper Dive with Derek Ham, a podcast by the News Service of Florida. Let's dive in.
You know, I grew up in the 305. My dad went to Beach High. We've got a special guest from the 305 with a deeper dive today. We're not in the Terracotta Room, but we are very close to the Capitol and very excited. Incoming House Speaker, I guess the official title is House Speaker-Designate Daniel Perez.
Correct. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the show. We're really excited about having you, and you're on a very limited time schedule, so we're just going to jump right in. What made you want to run?
So I grew up in a community in Miami called Westchester, and it's unincorporated in Miami-Dade County, but that's where my grandfather actually bought a house in 1974, and he bought it for $30,000 at the time. And he had bought it because eventually he wanted to move to Miami, but at the time he lived in New York. My parents left Cuba in 1969, so I'm a first-generation American. And when my parents decided to move to Miami, the first home that we moved to was the one in Westchester. And so that's basically where I grew up since I was 6 years old. And
so you really are the 305.
I'm the real deal 305.
Yeah.
The singer Pitbull claims to be Mr. 305.
That's right.
And he is. But somewhere on that list between 1,000 and 10,000, I'll take the title.
Do you know him? Have you ever met him?
I don't. But that would be cool.
I think you'd probably go out partying with him. I could see you too.
I don't know, but he seems like a cool guy. He's done a lot for our community, so he does deserve that credit. But yeah, so I did have the opportunity to represent my community, which was a little bit different because it's where I grew up, but it's also where I live, where my wife works, where I work, where my kids go to school, and someone eventually has to represent this district, and I thought this was a good opportunity for me to do so because it's not so much representing your constituents, but representing people that have known you since you were 6 years old. You're representing your family, your neighbors, your friends, your teachers, which, by the way, representing your teachers can get interesting because all of a sudden they become very opinionated.
Sure.
And they remember when you were 13 years old. Watch out when you
go to the grocery store and they want to tell, when your community members want to tell you about what this bill or that bill or whatever, their HOA problems.
Yeah, trust me, I get that a lot. And Cubans, which is most of the population that I represent, right. I don't know if you know this or not, but they're very opinionated.
No.
Oh, believe it or not, very opinionated. So I get my fair share of what's on the top of their mind when I go to Publix on the weekends.
Right. Well, I want to just jump into some of what I listened to your, I was telling you, I listened to your watched your designation ceremony last night, and you spoke about your personal interest in people with special needs and shared about your family's struggles to provide care for your brother. I wanted to ask you about what your priorities are going to be. That was something that you mentioned during your speech, so I'm assuming that's going to be top of list.
Yeah, I think that the answer to your question is really twofold. I think the first part is, which by the way, very common question now, is what are my priorities over the next 2 years? Mm-hmm. And I've served under some great speakers, and each of them have done things a little different, but they've prepared for those 2 years in the way that they thought the House needed to be prepared. And I'm taking the same approach. And I think over the next 2 years, the list of priorities are being made as we speak. So I pride myself on being very accessible. And I'm traveling the state right now, getting with my membership and creating what that platform looks like. Internally, do we have our morals, our values, and our principles that we're going to work backwards from on what that policy looks like? Absolutely. And those obviously include making sure that we limit government, that we keep taxes low, that we take care of, which, by the way, should be the overarching theme of the next 2 years for the state of Florida, affordability. Right? It is becoming very expensive to live in Florida. We want to make sure we keep our talent here. So knowing those principles and those themes on helping our Floridians with the affordability problem is where we'll start, and then we'll work backwards. But to the second part of the answer, when you're talking about those that have special needs or the developmentally disabled, unfortunately, this is not an area that is very sexy, right? There's not a lot of money here. It's a place where if you care about it and you want to make a change for the better, it's because you have a personal connection to it.
It's not a powerful constituency. It's not a powerful special interest.
It is not. There are not many. If I'm getting 100 meeting requests, just to put a round number on it, I would tell you maybe 2 or 3 are going to have to do with the special needs community. But if you look at it based on a percentage, the majority of families are affected by the developmentally disabled lifestyle and the necessities that community has. And so where I kind of came from was, what is it that I can do to help this community, but really to put them in a better place for their future? And as the oldest of 3 siblings, my sister is the middle child, and then my brother is the youngest. I saw how other families struggled to have the right care for the developmentally disabled, have the right schooling, have the right future, the purpose that we all live. When you and I wake up in the morning, we're very blessed. We wake up, we're able to brush our own teeth, we're able to feed ourselves, and we're able to go forward that day in the best way that we see fit for ourselves, whether it's our job, whether it's a hobby, whether it's exercise, but we make those decisions. Many times the developmentally disabled can't make those decisions for themselves, and it's up to their family to make that decision for them. How can we put these families in the best position so that the resources are there in order for that child that is disabled, that is developmentally disabled, that does have autism, for that child to have a purpose? We all have our purpose and we have a passion, but what does the future look like for a child that is 12 years old, that doesn't know how they're going to live their life when they're 20? And you got to give that sense of security to a family, because that population is the voiceless. And it's my job, I've taken this as my job over the next 2 years to help them as much as I can.
Well, we'll be watching that closely, because I've been around for a minute, as you can see by looking at me, and that agency has been riddled with problems for many, many years. So good on you for taking the mantle up. You're talking about different leaders and how they approach the leadership as different speakers. Is there anyone in particular, any former legislator or former leader that you're thinking of modeling your leadership style after?
The beautiful part of coming in a special election and having what we call a redshirt year is you're able to see a different administration than everyone else that comes in with what would be considered your class. Right. So I have seen a variety of leaders, a variety of styles, a variety of personalities. None of them were perfect, but all of them had their strengths. And I think now is kind of the time where you pick and choose what were the strengths of each of them, and also the weaknesses or the mistakes, to where you can say, look, I saw this was the problem. This is how he or she went about it. And, I liked the mindset, but maybe I could come at it from a different angle. You get to learn a lot from the presiding officers. And really the most special part of having 2-year terms and learning from so many different leaders is that you quickly realize the House, the legislature, wasn't built overnight. The success of Florida wasn't built overnight. Quite frankly, it wasn't even built over the last 2-year term. It wasn't built over the last 5 years or the last 10 years. We quickly forgot the leaders that built that foundation for the state of Florida to be where we're at today. And I always mentioned a Jeb Bush. I mentioned a Rick Scott. You mentioned I mentioned some of these governors from times past that have allowed for what I believe is getting the football at the 2-yard line and simply having to have a 2-yard drive to get into the end zone. Some of these leaders that came before me didn't get it on the 2-yard line. They got it on the other end zone, and they had to travel 98 yards. I feel very blessed to be involved with a state that is so prosperous for so long because the foundation is so sturdy.
A lot of times leaders come in and they're not looking at, playing the long game. I think that's what you were kind of alluding to about Governor Bush too. So, they want something, some shiny object right away as they can show, as they can put that on their wall as a trophy or an achievement. So are you thinking about more long-term policy setting, direction for the state?
We continue the principles that got us here, obviously with less government, less regulation, less taxes. I think making sure that the state adds to its accomplishments and doesn't go backwards, because you never know what the future holds as far as the economy is concerned, for example. You never know what the future holds with regard to a natural disaster. Every single 2-year term that I've participated as a member of the House, there has been some event that has changed the trajectory of that leadership. You can never plan for some of these, but you have to be prepared for them. And so when you think about the next 2 years and you ask me, well, what direction do you intend on taking the state in? Well, one, I want to make sure that we don't mess up the successes that we've had before us. There's a reason over 1,000 people are there moving to Florida. It's because we've been doing a good job. And we've been making the right decisions, sometimes tough decisions, by the way, but the right decisions nonetheless. But we'll see what the next 2 years hold. We don't know what's going to be put before us, and we're obviously preparing for it. And we feel ready, but some of it is the unknown.
We'll be right back with House Speaker-Designate Daniel Perez.
At Tampa Electric, we're proud to provide 99.9% service reliability in blue skies and gray. We're modernizing our grid to increase resilience for the families and businesses that depend on us every day. Year-round, we harden our system against extreme weather by burying power lines, maintaining line clearance, improving substations, and upgrading systems to restore power faster. Because the work we do now means reliable power for a bright future. Learn more at tampaelectric.com/reliability.
And we are back with House Speaker Daniel Perez. I want to ask you again about something that you said during and then I want to move on to elections. You talked a lot about bills that don't matter, and we have a lot of things on the calendar or the agendas. I want to ask you two things. You said the legislature is the first branch of government, very emphatically. Do you think that the legislature has spent too much time on issues that don't matter? And I think those were your words. If not, forgive me, I'm rewording. What does it mean to you for the legislature to be the first branch of government?
The legislature is the first branch of government, and I said it emphatically because the members need to know the sense of responsibility that the constituents have afforded them. We are the membership that creates the budget. We are the ones that create the law. When you have that sense of responsibility, you can't think once or twice as to whether or not the bill that is being filed on behalf of a member is the right bill. It needs to be thought 10 times, 20 times. And when thinking so, is it necessary? And if it's necessary, why is it necessary? All of that has to be discussed before a bill is filed internally within that member's mind. far too often we're going to get the why isn't my bill moving? It's a common question that members want to know. But the rebuttal to that is your bill necessary? What are you fixing? Or are you creating a problem? Or are you finding a solution for a problem that doesn't exist? I've always thought that less is more in government. I've always thought that way. I think once you create government to be this overarching theme of control, then I think you're going away from what our founding fathers envisioned when they created the United States of America. I don't like the overpowering theme of government. And I think the more bills that you begin to pass and eventually create laws, that's what you're doing. You are enlarging government. And that was really the message to my membership, is think about it more than just once or twice. What are you truly solving for? It isn't necessary. So I hope that they took that to heart. But also it's a good insight for the membership to see how my mind works, because this is a relationship amongst us as well as members of the House, regardless of what party they're in, by the way. They need to know that when they do come and want to have a discussion on a bill that they have filed and as to whether or not it has moved, I want them to know the questions that I'm going to ask them. And I think we set that out in that speech.
You know, I think a lot of people interpreted your comments to mean there's been a lot of buzz about like the legislature maybe, I want to say this in a way, we don't really know each other, so
You're not going to offend me, I promise. I'm a Cuban guy from Miami.
All right, good.
It's going to be okay.
So I can go there. All
you
right.
can.
Thank you. So that the legislature has ceded too much of its authority to the executive, specifically to Governor DeSantis. Do you think that's true? And were your comments sort of signaling anything?
The governor has been a great ally of ours, and we work together very often. And the governor is phenomenal at being the governor. He's a great governor. We're very blessed to have him as our governor. And that relationship will continue over the next 2 years. It's a working relationship. We're on the same team, and we all have the same common goal: make Florida a better place tomorrow than it is today, and every day thereafter. That being said, there is still the reminder that the legislature is the branch of government that creates the law. And
a separate branch of government.
Absolutely. And there wasn't a shot at the governor. I know some people wanted to interpret it that way, but we're friends and we get along very well. But one thing has nothing to do with the other, and it's okay to disagree from time to time, as long as it's done in the right way. And I'm sure that there will be plenty of times that we will be in disagreement, but it will be done in a respectful manner, and we'll move forward in the way that the legislature sees fit. And from there, it'll be a trickle-down effect, and you'll see where the chips fall. But each of us are different people, all striving for the same goal.
Thank you for that. One of my friends in the process asked me to ask this question: will the Capitol renovations be completed in time for the November special session?
I hope so.
I mean, the November...
No special session, but for
organizational
unless
session.
You know something I don't.
No, I'm sorry. Let's fix that, guys, right?
No. That's the plan. That's the plan. The Capitol is getting fixed. We're getting renovated, I should say, not getting fixed. But the sooner, the better.
Heck yeah. It's a mess down here.
It's a little messy. Yeah. It's dusty.
Let me ask you about the 2024 elections. The Florida Democrats have made a big deal out of running someone in every seat. Some of my pals and some insiders think it's not that meaningful. In fact, it might do more harm than good. Firstly, clients, who they're representing, if they're lobbyists, have a certain budget for campaigns. If you're running more people in more races, they're still going to have to prioritize. So are these races really going to be meaningful or significant? And forcing you to have to spend resources in races where you shouldn't have to be spending resources, is that going to bite them?
That's a strategy that I'll leave to Leader Driscoll and I guess Nikki Fried and what their thoughts are on that. I don't know what their purpose was or what they were thinking or what their goal is with that, but the truth is that doesn't really affect my strategy. It doesn't really affect my goals. We are very disciplined. We're very militaristic. We're very focused, and we feel very confident that November is going to be a successful election for us. we've recruited very, very high quality candidates for the open seats. And we believe we're going to be able to bring back to the Republican Party seats that today we don't represent.
What seats are you? I love when this happens. You go where I'm going to go.
We're on the same page already.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So what are the races that we should be watching for in November?
So there are two candidates that we have endorsed as House majority that we believe will turn into Republican seats that today are held by Democrats. One of them is HD 35 with Tom Keene, which we're running Erica Booth.
Right.
And Erica Booth is a great leader in that community.
He flipped that, right? I think was that
correct.
Flip? Right.
Correct. That was the old Fred Hawkins seat.
That's right.
And we feel very confident with Erica Booth, and she's working hard, but she also is going to have all the resources at her disposal to make sure that we bring her to the Florida House and she becomes a member. And the second one that we have endorsed is Ed Montanari, currently held by Representative Lindsey Cross.
That's St. Pete, Tampa Bay.
Correct.
Right?
And Ed Montanari is a sitting commissioner, a veteran, a pilot, a good family man, and we feel very good about that seat as well. So we're fundraising every day. That's basically my job right now. I'm a professional fundraiser, and we're making sure that the resources are there for us to be efficient, but to be aggressive. Then that's, I think, the one focal point for me when I speak with my campaign team. And we strategize and we do the check-ins and the updates and we pivot. It's make sure that we're aggressive. We're not going to leave anything behind. We're going to go all in all the time, and we're going to move fast. But when you move fast, you have to strike with force. And I think we're ready to do that in those seats.
I mean, this might not be a great follow-up question because you already said that you think you're going to pick up seats in November. But you see a lot of internal polls. I'm sure you're adjusting to all of that. I'm wondering what the polls are showing you with the races you're involved in, with the vote on abortion. Privately, some Republican members have said to me and others, they wish they didn't have to go on the board for the 6-week restriction. Do you think that is going to have any impact on races? And then also want to ask you about the amendments.
Yeah, so I do think that the expectation that amendments are going to skew the election one way or the other is a little oversold. Mm-hmm. I don't think that it will move the needle the way that people expect it to. That's what we're seeing on our end. I'm opposed to both of those amendments, that 3 and 4, which I think is what you were alluding to. I figured, because we're on the same page.
Right.
That's why.
This is why he's the speaker.
But at the same time, although I feel very confident in the product that we're going to produce come election day, I'm also very realistic and understanding that it's not going to be easy. Just because I feel confident doesn't mean that I think it's going to be easy. I think it's going to be tough, but it's not only attainable, but I think it's going to be realistic when I talk about the success come November. But my point is, you read the articles that the Democrats are not giving up on Florida, and that Joe Biden
except they are.
I don't know if they are. I don't know if they are or they are not. I would if I were them, but I don't know what they're thinking to do with their money. They got plenty of it on a national scale. There's some talk that Joe Biden is within the margin of error of 4 points when we're talking about the state of Florida on a presidential ballot.
I would be very surprised.
I would be too. But we're not going to fall asleep at the wheel. We're not going to fall asleep at the wheel. And there are some parts of the state where we have to focus a little bit more than others, or the Orlando area with Seminole and Osceola, and that's Orange. That's a little bit tougher for the Republican Party right now. Miami's always going to be tough. But what's interesting about Miami is with President Trump at the top of the ticket, Miami's one of those places that just does better when President Trump is around.
Why do Hispanic voters love President Trump so much?
I wouldn't say it's all Hispanic voters, although I will tell you that it is trending to being all Hispanic voters. And the Hispanic community is one community alongside the African-American community where President Trump and the Republican Party is doing significantly better.
I want you to know that I know the difference. There are different Hispanic communities, and I think it's really sort of condescending, or I don't know what the word is, for reporters to lump all Hispanics together. I don't.
Oh, no, I wasn't offended at all.
And I know that the Orlando Orange, that Osceola, that's very different Hispanic constituency than what you have down in Miami. But he is very popular in Miami. I mean, I see these tweets and pictures and videos from the Versailles whenever he goes there, and it's just crazy.
Let me tell you, you see that on television. You go in person, and it's the following that President Trump has in Miami is very impressive. But
what is it about him and his policies that's so attractive?
With President Trump, a lot of it has to do with his personality. I'll speak for myself. My culture, the Cuban culture, is very open, very transparent, very honest, and very upfront. We kind of tell you how it is. If we like you, you're going to know because we love you hard. And if we don't, we're going to tell you that we don't like you. We're going to tell you why. And we're going to be able to have that conversation as to why we don't agree or why we think you did something incorrect. Trump is very similar in that manner. He's a straight shooter. He's a straight shooter. Not seen by the community, by the Cuban community, as a politician, just seen as a regular dude who says it how it is. That's how the Cuban community sees President Trump. You get something that is not normal when you're talking about an elected official. People, what you see on television, you'll see like a certain persona that is played, and that gets old. People want something real, something tangible, something that is kind of like the guy next door, and. President Trump does that for the Miami community, but it's not just the Cubans, the Venezuelans. You get the Colombians. You're starting to see the Brazilians, the Mexicans. You're starting to see that the Nicaraguans, for sure, Central and South Americans that have had their governments turn to the left very fast, very aggressively, and when they've done that, they've said, whoa, hold on. This is not the government that I want in the United States. I just left this country. The Cubans have felt that way since 1959, when the revolution took our country from us. But now you're starting to see that it's happening in all these other countries. And not only do they see what the regime did to Cuba, they're making sure that the United States doesn't turn that way. And whether that's a reality or not is a totally different conversation, but that's how many of them feel. And that's what matters. How they feel is what matters when they go to the ballot box.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that answer. Thank you for that. I have two questions. Maybe we don't have time for both. I wanted to ask.
We have time for both.
All right. What was the biggest lesson you learned as president of ALEC? You were president of ALEC last year?
I was the national chairman of ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. What I learned the most is that although, which is similar to the House, by the way, the House of Representatives in Florida, although all of us have a common goal, and it's a nonpartisan organization, but most of them happen to be Republican, right? Overwhelming majority.
Right.
Although we all see the world the same way and what we would like the world to look like, we all have different ideas on how to get there. And what may work in Florida may not work in Utah, and what may work in Utah may not work in North Carolina. But when you see the problems that some of these other states ran into with the model policies that they were passing in their state legislatures, it gives us an opportunity to not have to run into those same hurdles. Although different demographics, because we all have different problems.
Because Florida's been a model for some of this, or some of the ALEC.
For many.
Yeah, right.
For many, but not even just ALEC. I mean, Florida has been a model for all states.
A lot. NRA bills.
But it's not even on the issue. It's on the way that it's on the successes of the state. I think when people start to see the successes that we've had economically, they start to ask themselves why we've had those successes. And then that's when you take a deeper dive on what the policies, which policies were passed in order to make Florida a successful state. And that's what's being picked up by all these other states. But in turn, we also do the same. We look at a Tennessee, which has a phenomenal economy. You look at an Ohio or an Indiana where you say, I like this, but I don't like that. And so I don't want to do it this way because I saw the troubles that the speaker ran into in Indiana, for example, as a good man. But we've been able to have those conversations. Of Utah, I would have never learned about the successes of Utah if I hadn't been a member of ALEC. I mean, the state of Utah is ran in a very lean way. They're very lean. Very conservative, though, at the same time. A very successful state, in my opinion. So I've learned and I've been able to build a lot of relationships. And also I've been able to showcase Florida. I'm very proud of being a Floridian. I wasn't born in Florida, but I was here since I was 6. And this, to me, is my home. It's the home of my children. And I don't plan on going anywhere. I don't even plan on leaving Miami, to be very honest with you. So I kind of want everyone to see what I see in Florida. And Alec gave me that platform to be a proud Floridian and show other states our successes and why they should be more like Florida.
Thank you again. And so my last question is, I asked your counterpart in Senate President-Designate Ben Albritton the same question. He was on a couple of weeks ago, and we found out that he's a classical music fan. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
So the question is, what's something about you nobody knows that you can share with us?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm going to tell you, but it's not going to be a surprise.
Okay.
I consider myself, everyone else's opinion is irrelevant for this consideration. I consider myself a phenomenal dancer. But whether that's
you and
true
Marco
or not,
Rubio.
Whether
Rubio's
that's
he
true or not,
himself
I don't know. But if you ask me, at least when I dance, I feel like I'm a good dancer. Okay. I just don't know how true that is in reality.
Do they still do that Cuban, the Hispanic caucus dance that at the?
They do days.
No, there used to be a dance that the Black Caucus and the Hispanic Caucus used to do.
It hasn't happened in recent years. It did happen when I first came in the legislature, and then COVID came and it messed everything up.
Are you going to have an opportunity to show us your skills?
One day we'll have that opportunity. I'll send you the video.
I can't wait. Listen, House Speaker-Designate Danny Perez, it's been a real treat visiting with you today. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, and hopefully we do this again sometime soon.
Hopefully, yes.
Thanks for listening to Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida, produced by me, Mike Exline, and hosted by News Service's senior writer, Derek Ham. Music for the podcast was recorded by Periodic Labs, LLC. To tell us what you'd like to hear, what you've thought about the podcast so far, or even just to mention how awesome we are, we have a new email address and we'd love to hear from you. So email us at podcasts, that's with an S, at e.newsserviceflorida.com. That's podcasts at e.newsserviceflorida.com.